The Young and the Restless spoilers shock. Genoa City had always thrived on scandal, but now, something far more sinister was taking root beneath its carefully constructed facade of opulence and power. No one could quite put their finger on it, not yet. There was a strange heaviness in the air, an unease that made even the most ruthless business moguls pause before shaking hands and signing deals. It wasn't just paranoia. It was dread. Something unspeakable was about to unravel, and for once, not even the most intuitive minds in town could predict what would happen next. But whispers had already started spreading, laced with panic and curiosity, passing from one corner of the city to the next like wildfire. A body had been found, lifeless and abandoned, left as a macabre warning to those who thought they were safe. And though no one could confirm who the victim was, everyone had a theory. And every theory carried with it a storm of consequences that threatened to consume Genoa City whole. Of all the names being thrown around in hushed conversations and speculative headlines, none were more haunting than those of Damien Cain, Adam Newman, and Chance Chancellor. Each of them powerful, each of them with enemies, each of them potentially the tragic centerpiece of this unfolding nightmare. But what made the situation all the more disturbing was the possibility that none of them were truly the target, and yet all of them could be. Damien, the enigmatic new force in town, had been navigating a labyrinth of dangerous alliances and shifting loyalties ever since his arrival. His relationship with Lily Winters had become more than gossip fodder. It had evolved into an emotional lifeline for Lily, who had only recently begun to heal from a series of devastating betrayals. Damien had appeared just as she needed him most, offering her a sense of stability that few believed he could truly provide. But what if it had all been a lie? What if Damien, in trying to protect Lily, had become a casualty of a game far darker than anyone had anticipated? The press didn't help matters. Multiple respected outlets published conflicting reports, each more sensational than the last. Some insisted Damien was the one found dead, his body discovered by a horrified Claire Grace, who had allegedly stumbled upon the crime scene during a routine visit to Chancellor Park. But others contradicted that entirely, claiming it was Adam Newman, or Chance Chancellor, or even someone unknown but deeply connected to the tangled web of secrets being spun behind the scenes. The truth, however, remained stubbornly out of reach, like a shadow in a dimly lit hallway. Impossible to grasp but impossible to ignore. Claire herself refused to comment, her silence interpreted as everything from guilt to trauma to complicity. But was she truly the one who made the discovery? Or was she being used, once again, as a pawn in someone else's war? As the city held its collective breath, waiting for the truth to surface, one reaction stood out above all the others. Lily. Her scream echoed through the corridors of Memorial Hospital when she arrived at the scene, escorted by a trembling detective whose eyes had seen too much. She didn't need to see the body, not yet. She could feel it, in her chest, in her bones, in the way the air seemed to leave her lungs as if mourning alongside her. Her knees buckled, her voice cracked, and for the first time in years, she sobbed with the wild abandon of someone who had lost more than they could bear. Whoever the victim was, Lily believed, in that moment, that it was Damien. And that belief shattered her. But in a cruel twist of fate, not everyone shared her grief. Cain Ashby stood at a distance, watching the chaos unfold with an expression that could only be described as pleased, relieved, even. It was subtle, but unmistakable. In the face of death and devastation, he smiled. Why? The man who had once fought to keep Lily in his life, who had claimed to still care for her happiness, now stood as a silent witness to her collapse. Was it jealousy? Vengeance? Or had Cain simply known something that no one else did, that this death, tragic though it may be, would finally tip the scales back in his favor? Perhaps he had orchestrated something, planted a seed that would only bloom in the aftermath of Damien's demise. Or perhaps, he simply believed that Damien, whoever he truly was beneath the polished exterior, had always been a danger Lily never saw coming. Still, the question lingered like a curse over Genoa City: who was the body? And why had it been left where it would be found so easily, where it would devastate precisely the right people at precisely the right time. The investigation had just begun, but already the rumors were spreading faster than facts. Police remained tight-lipped, refusing to confirm or deny the identity of the victim. But that didn't stop the public from drawing their own conclusions. Damien had recently been seen arguing with several key figures at Chancellor Winter's, including Devon and Nate, both of whom had expressed concerns about his motives. Could the confrontation have escalated into something fatal? Or had Damien been lured into a trap by someone far more calculated? And what about Chance? The police officer had recently uncovered evidence of a major cover-up, one that could expose a high-profile figure tied to the Newman family. If Chance was indeed the victim, it meant someone had silenced him before he could reveal the truth. And if it was Adam, well, the implications were endless. The black sheep of the Newman clan had more enemies than allies, and more skeletons in his closet than anyone could count. It would not be the first time someone had tried to remove him from the chessboard entirely. But for Lily, none of the speculation mattered. Her world had narrowed to a single point of pain, a singular grief that threatened to drown her. She had opened her heart again, allowed herself to believe that perhaps love could grow in the rubble of the past. And now, it seemed, that hope had been buried alongside the man she had come to trust. Whether or not the body was Damien, the uncertainty was tormenting her, because the possibility alone was enough to make her unravel. Meanwhile, Cain's behavior grew more unsettling. He began appearing in places he hadn't visited in years: Crimson Lights, Society, even Newman Towers, always watching, always listening, always one step ahead. He made cryptic comments to friends and foes alike, hinting that change was coming, that power would soon shift, that some debts were finally being paid. When confronted about his apparent satisfaction over the tragedy, he simply shrugged. "Not everything is as it seems," he said with a grin, leaving behind a trail of suspicion and fear. And then came the most chilling twist yet. Surveillance footage was recovered from the edge of Chancellor Park, showing a lone figure dragging what appeared to be a body in the early hours before dawn. The face was obscured, the footage grainy, but the outline was familiar. Too familiar. When Lily was shown the clip, she turned pale. Her lips trembled. And without a word, she walked out of the station, as if the world had collapsed under her feet. She recognized the jacket. It belonged to Damien. But what she couldn't admit, not yet, was the equally terrifying possibility that the man dragging the body might not have been the victim. What if Damien wasn't the one being dragged? What if he was the one doing the dragging? And in that moment, the entire narrative shifted. Was Damien the victim, or the killer? And if he was alive, then whose body had been left behind? Was it a stranger? A scapegoat? Or someone Lily had trusted even more? The investigation deepened. DNA results were delayed, fueling further chaos. Claire, traumatized, withdrew from the media entirely, refusing to answer even Tracy's calls. Abby began to fear for Dominic's safety, believing that someone was using this murder to send a message to the powerful families of Genoa City. Sharon saw visions in her dreams, distorted flashes of violence and betrayal that she couldn't explain. And Devon, desperate for answers, considered hiring a private team to investigate the Newman Ranch itself, believing that something had been hidden there all along. But the real answer was darker than anyone could imagine. Because the body? It belonged to someone no one expected. A man who had come to Genoa City under a false name. A man who had once worked for someone far more dangerous than Cain, Victor, or even Tucker McCall. And this man's death wasn't an isolated tragedy. It was a signal. A declaration. That the war for Genoa City's soul had officially begun. And the next name on the list wouldn't just shake a family, it would bring the whole empire crashing down. If you'd like me to continue this plot or expand with more twists and details, such as the identity of the body, Claire's trauma, Lily confronting Cain, or even Victor's reaction, just let me know. I can build on this foundation in a serialized way. Cain Ashby had always been good at hiding things, his intentions, his anger, his darkest compulsions. But what he could never truly hide, no matter how hard he tried, was his obsession with Lily Winters. It wasn't just love. It was fixation. To Cain, Lily wasn't merely a woman he had once shared a life with. She was the axis around which his entire sense of purpose revolved. No matter how far she drifted, no matter who she loved, Cain watched. Quietly. Calculatingly. Endlessly. And now, with Damian Cain, her newest lover, dead under brutal, mysterious circumstances, everything Cain had kept bottled up began to leak into the open. Some men mourned the death of a rival with solemnity or silence. But Cain? He welcomed it. He reveled in it. Because to him, Damian's demise wasn't just a twist of fate. It was a necessary purge. A message. A warning. One that every man in Genoa City needed to hear: stay the hell away from Lily. Behind closed doors, the rumors swelled like a tide that could no longer be held back. Some said Damian had been involved in something shady: blackmail, sabotage, corporate espionage. Others swore they'd seen him arguing violently with an unnamed man near the docks the night before his death. But none of it mattered to Cain. What mattered was that Lily had let someone else into the space that used to belong to him, and now that man was gone. Erased. And if Cain had it his way, every man who dared look at Lily the way Damian did would suffer a similar fate. But while Cain might have silently celebrated Damian's exit, not everyone saw it as a triumph. Amanda Sinclair, once the epitome of composure and elegance, now stood on the edge of emotional ruin. For months, she had given Cain her trust, her love, her belief that perhaps redemption was possible for a man so frequently caught in his own shadow. She had stood by him when others whispered of his controlling nature, of the possessiveness he failed to mask with charm. She defended him even when her instincts screamed that his love for Lily had never truly died. And now, all those denials collapsed in on themselves like a dying star. Because Amanda saw the truth. Not in what Cain said, but in how he reacted. Damian was dead, and Cain was relieved. Worse, he was almost euphoric. Amanda could see it in the way his eyes lit up when Lily wept, in the way his voice lowered seductively as he offered Lily a shoulder, in the way he smiled when others weren't looking. The betrayal hit Amanda like a punch to the gut. She had known heartbreak, yes. She had weathered abandonment and lies before. But this was humiliation. She hadn't just been overlooked. She had been used. Used as a distraction. As a shield. As a placeholder for a woman Cain had never stopped loving. And now that woman was grieving, and Cain, that vile hypocrite, was circling her like a vulture pretending to offer comfort while quietly erasing his own footprints from the crime scene. But Amanda was not a woman to be discarded quietly. No. She burned with a quiet fury that was far more dangerous than Cain could possibly anticipate. The heartbreak may have brought tears, but those tears would harden into strategy. Amanda didn't scream. She didn't beg. She didn't demand explanations. Instead, she vanished. And that silence would become the most deafening threat Cain would ever face. Because Amanda knew how to make people talk. She knew how to uncover secrets. And now, she had one goal: to expose Cain. Not just for Damian's death, if he was involved. But for the entire web of obsession and deceit that had woven itself around Lily for years. Amanda's pain would become her power. And her revenge would be surgical, precise, and devastating. Meanwhile, Lily's grief had mutated into something darker, something far more volatile than sorrow. For the first time in a long while, she had felt whole with Damian. He was different. Or at least, he had been. He wasn't trying to control her or mold her into the image of who she used to be. He had accepted her pain, her flaws, and still managed to make her feel beautiful in the present. And now he was gone, ripped away from her without explanation, without justice, without mercy. The tears came easily at first, but soon they were replaced by something far more dangerous: rage. Lily wanted answers. She wanted names. And most of all, she wanted retribution. She began retracing Damien's final hours, piecing together every scrap of information she could gather. Who had he met with? Who had threatened him? What secrets had he been keeping? She pulled security footage, accessed phone records, pushed contacts in law enforcement for favors she never thought she'd call in. And the more she dug, the more she began to see the edges of something grotesque. A pattern. A design. One with a signature that felt far too familiar. She didn't want to believe it, not at first. But deep down, part of her always knew. Only one man had ever loved her so obsessively, so completely, that he would rather see her grieve than be in the arms of someone else. She confronted Cain, her voice trembling with fury. But he denied everything, of course. He looked wounded. Innocent. He asked how she could even think such a thing. He offered comfort. He wept for her loss. And for a moment, just a moment, Lily hesitated. Could she really believe Cain would do something so monstrous? But then Amanda showed up at her doorstep, holding a flash drive. No words. No explanation. Just a warning: watch this alone. And when Lily saw what was on it, footage of Cain, late at night, standing near the docks where Damien's body was later discovered, her heart didn't just break. It detonated. Because she knew that walk. She knew that posture. That was the real Cain. The one who would burn the world to the ground if it meant being the only man who got to love her. Now everything had changed. Lily's grief had clarity. It had a target. And she would not be passive. Not anymore. She would mourn Damien, yes. But she would also avenge him. She would make Cain regret every calculated step he took, every manipulative word he whispered, every lie he told himself about their so-called destiny. This wasn't about love anymore. It was about justice. And if the law couldn't give it to her, then she would deliver it herself. But Cain was spiraling. He could feel the walls closing in. Amanda was no longer returning his calls. Lily had gone cold. People were beginning to whisper. And worst of all, the very obsession that had once kept him focused was now making him reckless. He began leaving voicemails for Lily at odd hours. Sending her flowers she never asked for. Showing up uninvited to places she frequented, always with some excuse. But it wasn't love anymore. It was desperation. A man clinging to a dream that was slipping through his fingers like smoke. And when Cain is desperate, he's dangerous. Meanwhile, Amanda's plan was beginning to unfold. Quietly, she began gathering allies, people who had once feared Cain, or who had been hurt by him in the past. She reached out to Tracy, to Nate, even to Devin. She didn't tell them everything, but she told them enough. That Lily was in danger. That Cain wasn't who he claimed to be. That Damien's death was not a tragedy, but a statement. And that if they didn't act soon, someone else might be next. Amanda wasn't seeking justice in the traditional sense. She knew the legal system could be bought, manipulated, twisted. No, she wanted to destroy Cain in the only way that mattered, publicly. Completely. She began working with investigative journalists. She leaked snippets of Cain's past. His shady financial deals, his emotional manipulation, even old, buried restraining orders that he had paid handsomely to suppress. And slowly, the perfect image Cain had cultivated for years began to crumble. He went from beloved ex-husband and tragic romantic to unstable predator in the eyes of Genoa City's elite. Doors closed. Invitations dried up. His name became a stain rather than a badge of power. But none of it compared to the final blow Lily delivered. At Damien's memorial, held in Chancellor Gardens beneath a sky gray with the threat of rain, Lily stood before the crowd, her voice steady, her eyes clear. She didn't just mourn Damien. She condemned his killer. She didn't name Cain directly. She didn't have to. Her words painted the truth vividly enough. She spoke of love twisted into possession. Of men who mistake control for affection. Of wounds inflicted not with fists, but with silence and fear. And as Cain watched from a distance, soaking wet from the storm that had begun to fall, he finally understood that he had lost, not just Lily, but everything. And what was left of him was now nothing but a ghost in the city he once thought he owned. But if Cain thought it was over, he was wrong. Because Amanda had one last card to play. And it was soaked in blood. Let me know if you want the next chapter. Amanda's full revenge, Lily pressing charges, Cain's downfall, or even a plot twist where Damien is revealed to be alive and orchestrating everything. I'm ready when you are.